Hello and welcome to the new Sandbox 2.0 in wildlife. This is an introduction video that shall help you get started and have a quick brief overview of all the features. Of course, this is the first implementation, so things are subject to change and there will definitely be more features being added. So this is not going to be the last and most detailed video about all of this, but is meant more as a quick introduction, so you know what buttons to press and what things do what. So let's get started. I'm here in the main menu and I will just go here, click Sandbox, and then click Showroom. And then you will see this dialog will open up. On your session, it will probably the first time not have some of these things, so you will only click here, Empty New. And I think it also doesn't show this at all the first time you have nothing saved yet. So let's just click Empty New. And here we are inside the sandbox. Now the first thing to know is that the sandbox as you know it is still there. I can still click T to open up the spawner and spawn characters. I can still click O to open up the poser and do this stuff. And this is just fine, it works, but it's not the Sandbox 2. The Sandbox 2 is this. You open it up using the tab key. So when I click tab key now, and then you can see my Maya freezes for a sec because she's no longer being controlled. And I can detach the camera. How I'm doing this is I'm holding the right mouse button, and then with WASD I can fly around the whole level. And I'm not bound to anything. This camera doesn't control with anything. I can go below levels, I can go through things. There's no collision for this camera. Okay. So far so good. So if when I click tab again, I exit this edit mode and my Maya gets back in action and I can walk around again. So let's click tab again to open up the editor. And now we go through the three things that we have. So the first one is sex scenes. And then we have poses, and then we have props. Since this is a video for YouTube and I want it to be not be deleted, I will not show the sex scenes going on, but I will go in here and we can see some stuff. So I click add new sex scene. And then you can see the window looks like this. We have here the first column on the left is the pairing column. In here you have all the characters listed, like every single individual character, then every single pairing listed alphabetically. So we begin with Bowl, then J, M, and so on. And actually the partners are not alphabetically listed, or G, I don't know. Anyway, but the first name is. So it starts with Bowl, then it's Corback, then it's Diablo, and so on. So this is alphabetic. So once you click one, let's say we want to have, let's just go with the classic and pick Maya Max. That would be here, Max Maya. It has 53 animations. You can also see here in parentheses the number of animations within a given pairing. So I can click this. And now you can see it has opened up my list of animations. They're all in here. And you can see they're already opening up with preview and everything. So we have a little preview of what's happening. You can also rotate this. I will not rotate this further, so it doesn't have to delete the video. But anyway, so yeah. I have here my list of available animations, and you also have a little search bar, so I can type in here stuff that I want to have. From what I can see, yes, it also does take into account. No, does it? Yeah, okay. So you can type in anything, and if it is in any form in the name of the animation, you can list it up. So you can list it for all the boob jobs, for example, stuff like that. So let's do that maybe. Let's go with boob, and then we have it here, and now we can see the next column is my animation queue. So I can click and drag, oh no, I don't click and drag, I do click this button and put it in the animation queue, and then I go to the next one and add it, and then to the next one and add it. So now I have all three boob jobs in my animation queue. And then I can also reorder them, right? I can move them around to create my own little playlist. I can then add maybe some, this doesn't clear the text, that's interesting. Little bug discovered. So all of these little bugs, of course, we will continue to fix. but for now, let's just do it manually. Let's maybe a blowjob. All right, there we go. It's added. Yeah, this clear text doesn't work at the moment. And that's it. So now we have our queue set up. And in here, for each of these entries, we have a little menu here with the usual settings that you already know. So we have the speed, the amplitude, and the smoothness for the randomization of the animation flow. And then, of course, we have our variation A and B. The variation A is usually for anal vaginal, as it's stated by the tooltip, and the B is for secondary variations. So you can, for example, do this. Then you could go into boob job A here and put it in again. And then now you have this one with variation and this one without variation. So you can plan it out pretty meticulously like that. Of course, you can then control all of these stuff, so however you want. And once you're done, we can click place. But before we do that, I want to go over some other things here. We have the animation queue and the option to have it looped. So what this loop does is it'll go through each of these elements for the duration of 30 seconds. This time is in seconds. And once it reaches the end, it'll just loop back to the beginning. So once blowjob A is done, 30 seconds, it'll go back to boob job C, and then it'll repeat this thing over and over again. If you turn looped off, after reaching this section here, this last one will just run forever, right? So a little feature there. Then we have the characters. You can specify which of the max-based skeletons you want to have and which of the Maya-based characters you want to have. So you want to place something other than Max and Maya. These are basically all the characters that share the animation skeleton of Max and can be used with this animation set. So the next step that would be to hit place. I'm gonna click it and see if I can. I already have to censor the video probably. Put it like anywhere. All right, maybe here. And now it is placed, and I can click it, right? And I can still see here I have the customization as usual. I can make the screen a bit bigger and customize Max as I want, change the skin, change the hair, change the eyes, change the clothes. I can do the same for Maya. I can also load here instantly my presets, and all of this stuff works. And if I want to edit the animation, you can see it's been moving on here, doing something else. I can click this here, click the edit scene, and then I can put back here, and then I can do my edits however I want, increase the length, change the variations, add more animations if I want, and then just click save, and it'll go back to do this stuff. So that's for the sex scenes. Let's delete it for now because I don't want to risk having that pop up again, and move on to the next, which would be poses. Let's click add new pose, and what this will do is it'll open up this dialog and it will ask us to select a skeleton, and you can see here are all the skeletons, individual character skeletons, and within these characters there are obviously more characters that share this animation skeleton, but these names are the main characters, the parents of the skeleton, so to speak. So if I select Maya and then I go to the preset, I can see I have all my custom presets down here and all the official wildlife characters with the skeleton up here. So for example, let's select Mercer and then click place, and we have a Mercer here ready to be placed. I can put her like on Maya, I can put her anywhere I want. I click her down and she is placed now. And now I have this gizmo. I can rotate, I can even scale, and I can move however I want, differently axes and all of that stuff. So additionally, I have also this here, which is to manually type in the values for the coordinates and rotations and scale that you want for her. Let's put her back to 1. You can see non-uniform scaling also messes up the physics a little bit, so maybe you do want to turn these things off. If you mess around with the scaling too much, it will break. So we have obviously these physics settings here that you can just turn off, and then stuff won't move, but also stuff won't be breaking. So that's that. Additionally, in the poser, everything is as you know it. So we have the body section with the speed of the animation. I can make her idle a little bit faster. I can make her stop completely. I can slide down the idle, which will put her in whatever pose you specify in here. And then you can also use this lerp slider here to interpolate between one and the other pose, and you will see it visually tell you that with the highlight of this yellow border on the selection bars. So now arms up is highlighted and it's yellow, and I lerp around and I can go, and Nash's acrobatic balance is completely highlighted. And I can do in between, and I can change poses, and stuff will, go in between there. Same for the face. And then additionally, we have the look at, which is also there. So if you have look at set to nothing, the head will just use the position specified by the body pose. If you set it to direction, you now get a little 2D field, and you can use this control to have her look in the direction respectively. Or you can have camera, and then she'll try her best to look at your current editor camera, as you can see. That's that. In the customizer, nothing really changed. It's still the same as the old one. You can still do whatever you want, and then you can still down here save the preset. And you can also select a new preset from, not from here. I don't think this feature is ready yet, but it will be later. So for now you can save the preset, and then you can just open up a new pose and then select your new preset and put it in. So there would be that. That's it there. Let's move down to the props, because this is another big portion of the Sandbox 2. So here we have a bunch of different topics. We have rocks, flora, furniture, food, lights, architecture, assorted, decorations, effects, and prototype. So in rocks, of course, as you expect, there's some rocks here. You can click one, and then you can place it down here, just like I did with the poses. You can also scale it, you can also rotate it, and then you can also, I'm going to show you now something, you can duplicate it with the Control D key. I click Control D, and I can see a second one has been made here. I can move it around, and the first one will be left there. So you can, create more objects by duplicating things around and then rotating them like this. And I already have a little bit of a rock side. Additionally, just now to quickly show you, there's also this key here that shows you a key map with the most commonly used, I think the only used for now, hotkeys, which can also be changed as usual in the input settings of the game settings. This down here just toggles your player character visibility if you don't want to see that for now. So that's that. A couple of issues with currently placeable assets is these orange rocks here. They don't look that great because they're still old assets, and they also look even worse when you scale them, so I would not recommend that. You can see when I scale them down, stuff starts to disappear here, and the polygons start to look weird. Sorry. So if you want to use these orange ones for now, I would suggest not to scale them too much. Use the default values and wait until we improve these assets and replace them with better ones. So that's rocks for now. Then in the flora we have a bunch of more assets. We have different types of trees, of bushes, of grasses, of flowers, of mushrooms, and all sorts of things like this. and you can like place one here, and then I have it here. And now technically if I want to have everything here be a bit more grassy, all I could do is just grab this guy and duplicate it a couple of times by hitting Control D and then moving stuff a bit further, you know, like this. Alright, and now we already have a little bit of grass in the level. And therefore you can just like, you know, build your own little scenarios like this. Okay, let's move on. Let's move down these topics here. We have not a lot in furniture yet, but we will extend it some more with time. I can place maybe a couch in here. We have like, oh, you can explore some of these things yourself. There's not a lot in food here, but now let me go to the lights, because this is something that opens new possibilities. So in lights we have 3 different light types, and in here we also have some light sources. So the main light types are the point light, which is here, the area light is this one, and then the spotlight is this one. I'm going to go over each of these to explain a little bit their differences and how you could use them best. So the point light is one point that shines out light in all directions, right? It's just like a little sun that you can put somewhere, and then you get here, for these things they have their own settings. Down here the settings will appear, and you can change a couple of things, and I will go through each of these things and tell you what they do, so you can get a better understanding of how best to use these and how to maximize the quality of your sandbox scenes. So the intensity is what you would expect. This is the light intensity. I can bump it up and everything will become brighter and brighter until eventually you just get outshined by it and you see nothing more than white. So let's leave it at 10. You can also reset things to the default with this key. The attenuation. For the attenuation, let's move the light somewhere into the dark here, like here. So now we can see the light having its specific effect on the floor. Let's increase the intensity some more, like this. And now I'm going to reduce the attenuation. Now watch what happens. You can see the reach of the light is getting lower, but not the brightness. The light is still using the intensity of 41, but it's the render distance, so to speak, that the light has. And this is very useful if you want to put lots of lights in your scene. Make sure to try and reduce these attenuation as much as you can, because the more reach this light has, the heavier it becomes on your performance. And the more lights overlap with the rendering, with the shadow casting and all of this stuff, the heavier the scene will become. So this is something to keep in mind. If you want to have the light just shine a little bit on a character's face, for example, you can make the attenuation quite low, put it next to him, reduce the intensity a little bit, and that should be enough. So let's go, for example, here to our Maya, put the light somewhere in front of her like this, right? And now lower the attenuation a little bit again, like that. And there we have another light source, and you can also see how the shadows on her now react to this light. Now the next thing is, I wanted to say something else, but I forgot. Let's just move on and see. Maybe I remember later. Oh yes, something that I should say earlier, but in the next video I'll try to be a little bit more structured. You can hold right click, and you know, with the WASD you can move around the scene, and the speed for now, for example, would be good to, you know, move a little bit of further distances because it's quite fast. But if I want to zoom in on a character and then, you know, just try to get a nice angle, it's gonna be really hard with this speed, because the tiny presses on the buttons move me a lot already. So what I can do is, not sure what what I can do, but what you could do is hold one of the movements active, and while you're moving around, use the scroll wheel. And you can see I'm already getting slower and slower and slower. And I'm doing that by scrolling down. And if I scroll up, you can see I'm getting faster, and if I scroll back down, I'm getting slower. So I can move into Maya and then scroll down a little bit, and then I become really slow. And now it's really easy to really granularly zoom into her face and get a nice shot of this. Okay, so now with her face in here, I want to show you one thing, which is this reflection dot here on her eyes. So this comes from this point light. If I set this intensity to 0, you can see all of this disappears, and this nice reflection dot goes away as well. So let's go back to 10, and here it is. And this is affected by the source radius attribute that we have down here. So what this will indicate is how big is the light source of this point light for the reflection rendering. So if I set this to 0, you can see the dot disappears and becomes so this area, this shiny highlight area disappears, and it becomes an infinitesimally small dot. Set the source radius to 1, and now I have a little bit of it, and I can set it to like 10, and you can see the bigger the source radius, it also sorts of like linearly then dials down its intensity based on the area that it's supposed to have. The default is 5 because I think that's a really good area for having nice dotty reflections on the eyes, but technically you could do whatever you want with it. But yeah, that's what it does. It doesn't affect the light behavior itself, so the light won't shine any differently based off this, but it will affect the reflection of the light. So if I make her wet, you will also see a difference here. Let me try that. Let's go to this is this player character does not appear in the poses, so I can't edit her. But what I can do is just hit tab again to exit out of this. So now I have control over my Maya again. Then I can click the O key to go back into this classic editing, and then I can go into skin and bump up the wetness. Let's do it like this. Okay, now I can click O again to go away from this, because I need to be in the regular game mode to now click tab to go into the sandbox. And now I can zoom back into her. I think the movement of the camera has been reset. It's also a little bit of a quality of life correction. I can go to the props tab here, click the light, go back in the settings here, and now you can see when I increase the source radius, you can see how it changes the reflection on her entire skin. And here now with this you can create specific looks that you would like to have. So this is pretty useful to do that. Let's leave it at the default for now. The next attribute is volumetric scattering. So what this does is it defines the amount of effect that this light should have on the volumetric fog that is in the scene. So you can see, for example, these other light sources, they shine this field of light, like they're shining the dust in the level. And this light can do that too. It currently don't, because the volumetric scattering is set quite low, but I can increase this. And you can see how actually the entire screen is brightening now, because now it's shining the volumetric presence in the level. And I can go a lot, and you can see if I zoom out how this light now looks like it's having an effect on the air and the dust of the level itself. So that's one thing that you could do there. Let's zoom in here again. Oh, what I just did, just to you know, I can click on stuff, for example on Mercer here, and then I can click the F key to frame it. Oh, I actually selected the light. Now yes, Mercer. I can click the F key on her and frame it, and it'll frame her pivot, which is on the legs, so it's not like framing her body, which is also something we could improve. But for now, you can use that to frame specific objects. Like, for example, click this patch of grass, click the F key, and it'll put that in the focus. And you can see also it has a little bit of a highlight going on that also shines through characters, which is also interesting. But for now we don't mind that. Let's go back to the point light and explain some more of the settings. So what's next? The next thing is the fall off exponent. What this does is it defines how sharply the brightness of the light should fall off in the distance. So higher values of this will make the light fall off faster. So I have to put this light now closer to her to have the effect, and it'll no longer shine as far. It's similar to this, but this is more of a mechanical thing to limit the render capacity of the light, and this is something that you do on top of that to then adjust the behavior of the light itself. So if I put this back to the default, the light becomes a bit brighter now because it was closer to her. So let's put it a little bit further away. The next setting is also quite an important one. Let's move the light something around here, and I'm gonna use the down arrow key to lower the brightness of the level lights. So all these previously placed lights that are embedded in the sandbox level here, I can turn them off to 0 by just going completely down on the arrow key, and now these lights are no longer anywhere there except for the one on the teleport stone, so you don't miss that. But now the only light that is actually affecting our character here is this point light. And you can see how it's casting a shadow on her nose and her face here. Everything is casting a nice shadow. Now if the shadow looks a bit weird, like it's looking quite low resolution, the shadow bias attribute can help. So what this will do is it will increase the fidelity of model details that should be casting shadows, the lower the value is. If I set this to 1, you can see how the shadows have become even less accurate. I don't think I can go above. I can actually go above 1, and it'll become quite apparent how these shadows now become lower and lower quality until they completely disappear, and now it looks a little bit weird. So let's set it back to the default, and let's go. The interesting parts become when you go below 0.5. So you can see how now things that weren't casting shadows before, like these thin hairlines here, are casting shadows now. But this detail comes at a cost. So if you go too low, then you will start to see specific areas of the model start to cast shadow that probably shouldn't. Like you can already see here, there's this weird relief texture that comes because the shapes of her belly try to cast shadow on themselves at this point. And I can go even below, like 0.05. And now it becomes even more apparent how the body is trying to cast shadow on itself based on like a pixel by pixel basis and the angle that it has to the next one. It also becomes really well visible here how you can start to see the model, the polygon structure of it, because this value is so low that these slight angles at which this one is staying now also start to produce shadowing artifacts. So this 0.05 is probably already a bit too low. But let's set it to 0.2, which is quite good. We have no more of these artifacts, right? These wider areas still look pretty smooth. But features like her nose, for example, also still cast nice shadows. Okay, and then last but not least, we have the color. We can click this, it opens up a color wheel for me with like all the colory settings that you know, and you can like control the color of this light. Let's make it slightly blue. Now the next three settings are basically just checkboxes. They're not something you can mess around a lot with, but I'll show you what they do. So currently, if I deselect everything, let's just click into the void, you can see there's still an icon here, and this is the light icon. And because of technical limitations, we can't bind it to the same, or for now we can't, maybe we can later, to the same hide UI key as the rest of the UI. So the rest of the UI can still be hidden by the hide UI key, as you expect from the classic sandbox. But this icon doesn't disappear. So that's quite annoying if you want to like make screenshots and have the lights around, but you can't hide them anywhere. The only way you can hide them is if you exit the edit mode. So if I click tab now you can see this light is gone. But maybe you want to take screenshots and videos from within the editor itself. So when you do that, I click tab again. the icon appears again. But I can select the light and I can just click this show icon and it'll just make the icon disappear. So now if I click into the void, sorry, you can see now the light no longer has an icon. I can still click into this area here and it'll select the light. So that's fine, but at least now nothing obstructs your viewport and your image making. The next attribute is obviously pretty self-explaining. It's the cast shadow box. If I turn this off, the light no longer will cast shadows. It will still try its best to make it look like it is, which is not a bad job doing it. But this will also save you a lot of performance. So if you start to place a lot of lights in the scene and you notice performance is going down, maybe turning off cast shadows on some of them can bring it a little bit back. For now, we will keep it on. To look at the next one, for that I have to put the light somewhere around here probably, and let's make it a bit brighter and get back this neutral color like this. Okay. So what does transmission do? Transmission makes it so the light affects the subsurface scattering of the character's skin. If I turn this off, you can see how her nose now is looking a little bit different here. Turning off, so you can notice a bit more the difference. You can see the transition between light and shadows now goes through a warmer set of colors that resembles light shining through the top layers of skin and coloring itself red and orange. And that's what you can do with this. So it adds a bit more realism to the overall image if you have this on. The problem with it is it comes at a little bit of a cost. If you zoom into this thing, you can see here this little artifacts. These come from the transmission, and it's based on the technique that it uses. We still haven't found a way to fix it and to make this look a bit smoother, but we're still working on it. So hopefully one day that will be a possibility. So that's the information about the point light. Now let's go back to the lights tab here. Maybe use the left and right arrow key to get a little bit of color back into the surrounding, of brightness I mean. And now let's pick the next light. I'm gonna skip the area light for now and pick the spotlight to show you a bit of a specific difference between the spotlight and the point light. Internally, the engine treats the point light as 6 times a spotlight, because what it does is it will shine a light sample in each of the 6 cardinal directions. So Y, negative Y, Z, negative Z, and then X and negative Z. And it'll use this and shine in all of these 6 directions. Will it shine light samples to create the illusion that it is something that shines in all directions. Technically, it doesn't shine in all directions, just in these 6. The spotlight is a light that only shines in one direction. So technically, it's a 1/6 of the cost of a point light. And you can see the spotlight also comes with a little bit of more stuff, namely this arrow that indicates in which direction it is actually shining. Here I'll use this chance to show you something up here. We have the manipulation in world space and in local space. So world space means, look at the gizmo for rotation. These axes currently are aligned with the world coordinates of this entire level. So the y-axis currently is aiming down in this direction, orthogonally to this green circle here, and then the x-axis in this one, and the z-axis of course up and down. Now if I click local space object manipulation down here, up here I mean, you can see how these axes change. And now they no longer follow the world coordinates, but now they follow this object's relative coordinates, which you can see have already been edited here a little bit. I can modify this thing now, and I can still rotate around the axis here to have a little bit more of a precise effect on how I want to move this stuff. Oh god, something I haven't said already, because to me it's second nature, is you can change the modes of editing, moving or rotating and scaling with the keys W, E, and R, which is pretty standard for industry 3D softwares. So I can click the W key and then I go into the move tool. Click the E key, I go into the rotate tool, I click the R key and go to the scale tool, which is irrelevant for lights. Lights don't need to be scaled. That doesn't have no effect on them, so don't do it. Anyway, let's move this light around so we can shine it on her. Like so. And yes, now let's go in here. The settings for these lights are pretty similar. They're pretty much the same as for the spotlight. The only thing that is different is we have a cone angle. And what this one does is it increases or decreases the cone area that this spotlight is supposed to shine from. So if I lower this, let's disable this point light for now, so we have a better idea of what this is doing. If I lower this, you can see how the light now is shining at a specific area, and I can increase the radius of the shine of this light by adjusting this cone angle. Now here's a little bit of side information that is probably very useful for you to know. Let's shine this light on her face here real quick, so we can see better what I mean. Come on. There. Okay. Now you can see here the shadow a little bit. And you can see it's not that great. So you can see her hair isn't really casting any shadow. And the shadow here looks a little bit pathetic. It's not that great. And again, we can use the shadow bias to fix this. So let's lower it to 0.1. And now you can see it's going a lot better here. Now her nose is shining proper shadow. This is starting to become a little bit more shadowed. On this spotlight, I have noticed you can actually go quite low. You can go to like something like 0.04, and it'll still not look broken on these areas. But it will look a lot better here. So maybe let's go to 0.01. I think eventually it will start to artifact. So, but you can see now this entire half of her face is starting to look a bit dark. You can notice here this is starting to produce these stripes from her polygons. So maybe 0.01 is already too low. Let's go to 0.02. That looks okay. But we are not over here, because the shadow that this applies, it can become even sharper if you reduce the area that it uses. Because if you imagine the shadow as a texture that this thing projects onto the meshes, the smaller the texture becomes, the more pixels can be in a specific area. So if I reduce this cone angle, you can see how the shadows are becoming sharper. And I can actually reduce it a lot until a point where for some reason it does something weird, but let's keep going. Let's leave it at like 20. Right, now you can see the shadow of her nose is quite sharp. You can see even individual hair strands here are starting to cast shadows. So it's starting to look pretty detailed. And this is something that you can do, like if you want to have really nice, crisp, full shadows on the characters that respect the model as much as possible. The best idea is to use a spotlight, shine it directly at the area that you want to have shadows in, lower the shadow bias a lot, and then also lower the cone angle. So the area of the shadow becomes as small as possible, so the shadow can be as sharp as possible. Other than that, this light has the same settings as the point light. So yes, that's that. Now let's move on to the next light type, which is the area type. So I click this, and you will see now this is a lot different than the other two lights, because under the hood it also is a lot different. This actually produced an entire square area. So what this does is it doesn't shine the light in just one point like the spotlight or the point light, but it uses this whole area to cast light. The only difference being that the shadow casting is still just being calculated by the point here in the center of the light. So the shadows still will look quite crisp, even though they shouldn't with a light source of this magnitude. But that's an engine limitation that doesn't have much to do with what we are doing here. So I can, move this around and, put it somewhere here. And now you can see how she becomes very lit up by this big area. And also you can see the reflection in her eyes also respects the shape of this stuff. So let's go into the attributes here real quick. And you will notice instantly that there's one big difference. The intensity of this light is at 5000. So this is because this light currently uses a different unit system for the brightness measurement than the other two lights. And this different units also has a different scale. So 5K gives you a result like this. And you can then also put this and lower it down to the point where it doesn't become relevant. But yeah, let's maybe change the select like this and maybe give it like a little bit of a blue color. Let's maybe pick a warmer color for the spotlight to have a little bit of a colorful image composition like this. Okay, now let's go through these attributes here. So we still have attenuation, and that'll behave the same as the other two lights. The light will not shine on anything further away than 800 units. Same with this. Because it's so close to Maya and we only want to shine on her, technically we can also lower this to like 300, and you can see nothing happened here, but now the light isn't reaching further than probably around here, which can make your scene run a bit faster if you have trouble with that. Volumetric scattering is still the same. You can increase this to, add like volumetric effect to the light and have it, shine on the surrounding area. For now, let's leave it at 0, at 1. And now these two attributes, they should be quite self-explanatory. I can change the light width and height, and that'll also narrow or widen the light. And if I do this, let's make a really narrow stripe of light like this. You can also see it gets reflected in her reflections. Now if you look at her for her body in general, because the wetness should still reflect it quite well, you can see how you can really well observe how the light is being reflected here on her skin. So that is something pretty useful to create even more specific effects for you. Now height, of course, changes the height as expected. Also changes the behavior of the light. You can see how the skin starts to reflect it a lot differently because of its height. It's pretty cool to play around with this and see what sort of cool effects you can create. Sorry. And yes, shadow bias, pretty much the same. The lower the number, the more detailed the shadows, but the more expensive the light, and eventually it will start to break. Like you can see, 0.1 is already a lot, not really well for this light because it's already starting to produce these weird artifacts here. Maybe 0.2 is better. Yeah, let's go with 0.2. And yes, so other than that, the rest is pretty much the same. We have color, we have icon, which will hide this icon thingy in the middle plus the arrow. So if I deselect the light, you can see we still see this icon here, and we still see this arrow here, which, similar to the spotlight, defines which direction the light is shining on, because on the other side of this plane there is no light. So even though it's also bright on here on this side, the light only shines in the direction of the red arrow. Something to keep in mind. So I can hide the icon and then the arrow disappears. I can disable cast shadows, and you can see the shadows will disappear on her. And then this one is new one, is show the light mesh. So this will make the light mesh visible or invisible. So if I disable this, you can see the mesh source of this goes away, and we're only left with the light and its effect, but no longer have this actual thing in the level. Now this is there because maybe you want to do something with you want to place like neon lights in the level and you want to make them visible. You can do it with this, and they will be visible even if I click the tab key to exit out of my sandbox editing. You can still see this shiny plate is still there doing the shiny plate stuff. So let's click back into the sandbox to go on here. That was it for lights, at least for these 3 light types. And now we have 2 additional light sources. Let's make it a bit brighter here. Is the fireplace. So I can place this around here, and it's pretty much just a standard fireplace. It's got some wood, it's got some fire, it's got some smoke, and it's got a light. Now the light attributes of this are a lot more reduced because we don't need too much of this. The color is defined by the fire, and the intensity is defined by the fire, and but you can change it if you want. Other than that, you can also disable the light, and then it'll keep it. It'll just keep the fire and the meshes and the effect. And then you could technically, if you want, just, you know, let's pick this light here, turn it back on, and move it over the fire to create our own light for the fire if you want to change the look of it. And I'll just give it a little bit of a fiery orange color. Right, and now we're back in business. And we have still a bit more settings here. I guess it would be better if I expose the point light settings also into this later on, which is something that I should do. But for now, that's that. You can also hide the fire, which then, of course, will disable the sound. You can change the sound volume for the fire, and eventually you start to hear it a lot. So if you want to have the sound, you can. If you don't, you don't. And that's pretty much it for the fire. It's no big deal. It's not that much of a thing. The other thing is torch. You can place a torch in here, and then the torch has a little bit more settings for the light. As you already know from the point light, the other difference here with the torch is you can have a different torch type. So I can, in torch type, I can click 1, and it'll give me this torch, and I can click 2, and it'll give me this torch. And I can click 3, and that'll give me just the fire and not the torch. So if you want to have just this little bit of fire somewhere but without the torch model, you can do that too. And of course the usual stuff, you know, use light. You can put your own light in that area to have a little bit of a different thing, and so on. So that's that. Now in architecture, for now we also don't have a lot. Every stuff mostly is as a placeholder, but we will be, as we progress with the level art, of course, be adding the new stuff in here. We have lots of plans for the houses, and we want to put all of these things in here as well, so you can build your own houses. But it's not ready yet. Then in assorted, we have currently one thing only, which is the dropship. So you can, let's click the dropship, put it somewhere here, and yeah, that's a big ass dropship now on our level. Here we have also a couple of settings. The dropship has lights. You can see they're here, and I think on the back here as well. And they have intensity. You can control it with the auto light intensity. So if you put it at 0, it will no longer shine lights here. You don't see the effect right now because it's not shining on anything. It also has volumetric scattering. So if I turn this, for example, onto something, you will start to see the effect. Now this is the inner volume. Let's not do that. Let's do the outer one there. And there you can see now how these lights start to actually visibly show their lighty behavior. Now the other thing here is show doors. So I'm going to click this off, and now these doors actually are gone. And the cool thing is then, if I click tab now to go away from this from the sandbox mode, I can actually climb into this ship now and walk around in here. Now there's collisions in here a little bit more disabled because of it would be a pain in the ass to navigate around these chairs for now. But yeah, you can walk around in the ship. You can climb up the back here to the crew area, down here to the gun area, and all of this stuff is in here. And yeah, so you can make stuff here. Then while we're standing in here, I can also just click tab again, and then select the ship, and then close the doors again, and click tab again, and now we are pretty much yeah, closed in. So that's that. Props assorted. Yes, then we have decorations, just some random decorations, piles of bones, boat, little poles. More stuff will be added gradually as we develop it. And if you have wishes, like if you have something in the level that's already in the game already, and you think, oh man, it would be cool if this would be in the sandbox too, let me know. It's not a big deal to add it. For now, we're not adding everything because we don't want to clutter it with stuff that will be deleted later on anyway. Because most of these things are placeholders and temporaries. Now let's go to the next category, which has a little bit of stuff to talk about, which is the effects. So in the effects, we have a bunch of things. Let's go one by one. I'm going to place this fly swarm in here. And maybe you can see it in the video. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Now I have a bunch of flies flying around in here, which is pretty cool. Now let's see what settings we have. We have the amount, which will increase the amount of flies. So if I add another 0, for example, you can see how there's more flies now. And I can maybe add even another 0. And there's even more flies now. And it's quite crazy. And you can already sort of like see the area in which they operate, which is probably defined by this. And you can also adjust the area size with this. So currently this is I think a 10 by 10 meter grid. But if I put this to 1, now it's a 1 by 1 meter, and all these 5,000 flies, they will be in here. So pretty disgusting. And then we also have insect speed. So you can see these flies, they're flying quite fast. I can set this to like 100. And you can see that they will gradually slow down. Then we have the insect size. You can set this to 25. And now you will have fat ass looking flies. And you can see it doesn't update instantly, but they get replaced a little bit by bit. Eventually all of them are replaced because it's a little bit of a dynamic system. And also if I move this now, you can see they don't all just move around statically, but they still fly around and linger until their effect is died out and they replace completely with a new position. I don't know what the frame rate is, but it doesn't feel that fast anymore with 5,000 fat flies. But we can also set this to like 1 in the insect size. And I can see bit by bit the flies will become smaller until we are left with a little fly field. And now these flies are quite small. And I can set the area size back to 10. And now you can see how they start to appear everywhere until they're back in the business. So yeah, now you can fly through flies. That's just not for the flies. Let's move down to the fire. Let's burn these fuckers. Put a little bit of fire in here. Oh wait, where did the flies go? Ah, okay. They were so small that they were barely visible. So if I put this to 1, it makes them small. Oh, they're still there. They were just too small to notice. Okay. Anyway, so let's go back to the fire. We have the 2 attributes only. It's not that big of a deal here. This doesn't have a light, so if you want this fire to shine a light, you have to put it yourself. It has a smoke amount. I can increase the smoke with 5. Obviously, you have to wait a little bit until it updates it. I can make it really, really smoky. And I can also set it to 0, which after a while, you can see it stops smoking and now it's just fire. And now I can change the fire type. I have type 0, I have type 1, which looks like this. I have type 2, which looks a little bit like type, actually a lot like type 1, but a little bit flatter, I guess. And this smoke is also a lot blacker. So if you want to have dark smoke, oh, it's flowing in our direction. Let's move away from this. What the hell? Alright, here we go. It's a big ass smoke. And it's flowing in. Let's move around like this. Okay. So let's maybe set it to 1. That's probably the default for this light, for this fire. Okay, yeah, that looks a bit better. And I think fire type 1 also has smoke, but it's not like that crazy. So fire type 2 is for really big smoke that moves a lot over the field. Okay, that's it for the fire. Let's go to the gas clouds. So I can place a gas cloud in here, and this is also a bit special because it uses an emissive type material for the gas. With this you can't make black cloud, so when you set the cloud color to black, it'll simply disappear because it uses the brightness of the color as the opacity, which is something we can correct a bit more in the future, but for now that's the behavior. So let's set it back to white. Maybe let's give it a color. Maybe let's give something like a poison yellow, and now it looks like this. And it has two components. It has the clouds itself, and then if I zoom into here, you can also see it has like little dotty things that flow around, and we can also give them a color, and we can then also just make them disappear. So I can set the particle amount to 0, and after a second or two you can see all the particles are gone, and I can set it to some crazy ass number like 5,000 again, and then you can see there's a lot of particles flowing around this area. But that's pretty much it for the gas cloud. And then we also have a firefly swarm you can put in here. That it's not like legit insects, it's more like fake fireflies, just like little dotties of light that fly around. And you can increase the amount and the area size. Later on I can also add additional attributes like the fly swarm for the speed of the dots and for the size of them. So that's it for that. Then we have a butterfly swarm. It's pretty nice. And it has the highlight material probably makes these copies of the butterflies. So if I deselect them, yeah, then it disappears. So it's something to keep in mind. I have the butterfly, and it's the same as the other one. I have the amount and the area size, and I can set the amount to like 1, and that'll make it not as crazy. So now I only have a few butterflies. You can see now there's like one little guy flying here, and that's probably it. 1 or 2, and it's just a couple of then. If you want to make things a little bit more moderate, you can use that. Now we have sparkly, which is similar to the fireflies, just an effect to make sparkle stuff. And I think that's probably the thing here. Let's see if I make this more. What happens? Ah, yeah, no, it looks like this. So it's a little bit of a different thing. These are just little dots that float around like pollen, for example. I think this is the pollen effect that we had in the jungle demo. So this does this, and also has a show icon. And then we have sparkly 2, which is another thing, but it's flowing particles of blue color. Later on I will also expose the color, so you can make custom colors for the stuff. I guess that should be possible. And the cool thing about this is if you reduce the area size, for example, to 20 or 30, these flowy things, they will start to converge, and they will start to create these funny looking patterns, and then you can move this around and put it somewhere else. This like weird organic flowy cloud will follow the stuff and you know, look all fancy and shit. So that's that. So pretty much they're done with the effects, except for the water. Water is a topic for itself because it's got a lot of settings. I'm gonna place some water in here, and I will lift it up a bit. And now you can see I click F to frame it completely. This is also this 10 by 10 meter patch. This you can scale. You can scale it however big you want. It doesn't really matter. It'll work anyway. And oh, Mercer's almost drowning. Oh, she's drowning. Let's lower it a little bit, like this. And to keep it clean, let me remove some of these effects here. Fire go, flies from go, delete all of this stuff, fireplace, torch. Alright, that's better. Okay, now we have our Mercer standing in this water, and I will show you some stuff that you can do with this. So let's go over the settings again and tell you what they do. So shore color fade distance, which isn't completely written out in here, is the distance in centimeters it uses to go from transparent to fully opaque. So if currently set to 750, that means that this water can be 7.5 meters deep before you start not seeing things at the bottom. So let's just try this out. I'm not sure how tall this ship is, but it looks like it could be almost 7 meters tall. So let's zoom out here a little bit, like this. Lift this water up, and you can already see like how it's starting to darken. And lift it up to like here. Let's have the ship being a little bit submerged like this. And now you can see if I look into the water, how it starts to fade away and become this watery dark depth color. And that distance is being defined by our 750 here. So if I lower this to like 10, now you can see this ship is completely underwater, and I can't see it because it's now using about 10 centimeters to blend between the transparent water and the deep water. And it also uses this edge fade distance, which is a little bit multiplier on top. So currently this is set to 55, which is higher than this, which is a bit counterintuitive. So ideally this would be 55 too, and then both of these do the same. But you can lower this also to like 5. And you can see how it starts to affect the close fading. And then you can set this to 5, and now this water is starting to get quite transparent, more like non-transparent, like paint, like submerged in blue paint. Then you can change the specular. So currently set to 0.1. If you set it to 1, you will see it reflects the environment a lot more, which also doesn't look bad. So depending on the look that you want to achieve, you might want to have a different value here. Setting this to 0 will make the water not reflect at all. So this isn't very desirable. So you want to have at least a little bit of it. You can already see things starting to happen here. So there's that. Then wave smoothness. You can currently see the wave patterns here. And if I reduce these, the waves become sharper and sharper, and eventually they become a little bit crazy and not really realistic. So not really supposed to go down below 1, but if you want to have it, there you have it. But you can also go above 1, and you can make the water smoother and smoother and calmer until eventually it's pretty much just flat. You reach the flat value at about 100. So 50. Now you can start to see a little bit of breakup here. 10. You can see a bit more. This is like really calm water. And of course 1 is a bit more crazier. Maybe 2 is nice. Let's leave it at 2. Okay. Then we have tessellated wave size. Now tessellated wave size, you can see if I increase this, you can see how the water now actually has waves going for it, and how it's affecting this. Now currently the tessellation is based on the resolution of the mesh, and I have it scaled out a lot. So if I scale this down more, Now you can see this wave detail. The waves are more narrow for their sharpness. So maybe this is a bit too sharp already. Maybe I can go for like 10. And now you can see here how the water sort of like waves in on it. And if you don't want to have any of this, you can set it to 0, and now this will just be flat. And in case you want to control really precisely where this water is going into, to work in that. The refraction amount would require us to make this transparent again. So let's go back to the defaults here, 750, and let's lower the water again until we see Mercer down there. Okay. And what refraction amount does is it is the amount of distortion that the water applies on underlying objects. So if I set this to 1, there is no. This is the, it's just a 1-to-1 carry over. Anything at the bottom will just be let pass right through it. And setting it to 2, of course, we'll do more crazy things. Setting it to like smaller values will only make it happen slightly. This doesn't look that right, but it's currently what we have. So the default value of 2 is quite okay, I guess. I can go a lot further, but eventually you'll start to see this starting to look kind of weird. But it can also, look kind of cool. So depends on what you want to do. Of course, this will take effect by the wave smoothness. So smoother waves, of course, you can see will reduce this effect again. And non-smoother waves, you can eventually say shit goes crazy and becomes a little bit buggy, and then things start to appear and show in areas where they really shouldn't be. So it's not something you should do, but I guess it depends on what you want to do. And then we have the 2 colors. So to show the colors, let's make this water a little bit less transparent. Let's say Mercer is in water that looks like this. Okay, and now can also have probably this at 0. Oh, still not quite 0, but anyway. Now we can play around with these colors. So this color here, I go with the second one first, the shore color. That is the color that it uses in between this deep color. The center color is the deep color. And then the shore color is whatever is in between. So if I set this to like red, for example, here, you can sort of see what I mean. So now it's using this deep color for anything deeper than 170 units. And anything above that is going to be colored in this color. So you can create pretty crazy effects that probably look not realistic at all. So water never would behave this way. This is not how it would look. Ideally, you want to have something that looks more in line with the other ones, so something like this, and also a lot darker like this, something like this. And this is more better. But also, you can, for example, change the color of this and behave completely. So let's say she's not standing in water. Let's say she's standing in milk. So what I would do is I would change this color to be whitish, like this. And then I would change the fade distance to something a lot less transparent, to like maybe 2 or 3. Right? And now you can see she looks like she's actually standing in milk. What we don't have, and something that I will disclose here already, you will see it yourselves anyway, we don't have underwater look. So if we go under the water, you can see stuff still looks pretty normal. And that's something we are currently trying to look into. It's not that easy to add on runtime, the post-processing required to do this. So it's not high on our priority list, so don't expect it to happen anytime soon. But yeah, it will look a bit weird. Actually, what I never tried is what happens if I rotate this around. I actually can make water be upside down. That's also pretty cool. I can actually make some sort of really weird sky like this. So yeah, that's also pretty interesting. Cool. So that was water. Let's get it back down. Okay. Let me see on my list what else was there. We did this, we did that, we did this, we did that, we did that. Okay, I think we're done. Oops. I think we're done with this first introduction. The one last thing that I can show, I should show, is the save and load. So after I did like this messing around with this level, for example, and I want to save it, all I have to do is click save scene here, and it'll want to me to give a name. Let's say tutorial demo, save, and it also notified me here where it's saved to that. It's in app data, wildlife C, and the rest is gone, but you can see it later. So now I can actually go back, exit, main menu, and it will warn me that there's unsaved edits, but currently that is the behavior. You saved it, it did save, don't worry, click OK, and go out. And now if I go to the sandbox again and select the showroom, now you can see here is my saved level, tutorial demo, and we're back in. Now what it did not save is any edits on my player character, so you can see Maya is no longer wet as she was before, and any edits to the surrounding level using the previous level tools, like the arrow keys to increase the brightness of the surround light and the other light. And it will also not save the where would it be? It will also not save this. So if I set this to sky, for example, to get the sky in, and then save it and then load this again, it will not be in sky. That's also something that we will look into to make sure that this stuff may also be saved. Other than that, I think that's it. You can also save as to save it as something else if you want to like not mess around with your previous progress. And then you can also just load stuff in. So let's load, for example, this one, which I think was nothing. Oh yeah, it was my car. Oh yeah, one last bonus. Let's go to props. We looked at effects, and the last thing is prototype. And prototype is just simple geometric shapes. So we have cube, we have a plane, we have a sphere, and a cylinder, and a cone. Boop. And they're pretty simple. They're just like geometric shapes with very basic settings. You can change the color, and you can change the emission, which will make them look like they're shining. And currently, you can do this, messing around with these two things, but what you can also do in the value here, overdrive it, set it like to like 5 or to like 50, and you will eventually see it will start to behave like some sort of sun, and you can take this to absurd levels, so you can set it to 500 and it'll become pretty aggressive. You can set it to 5,000, eventually it will become blinding. You can see here, let's set it to like 500,000. Boom, and then you can see like it starts to get really absurd. And maybe let's give it a white color, and then it becomes even crazier. And then that's also something you can do if in case you want to do something like that. But yeah. So I use these little geometric shapes. You can do pretty much whatever you want with them. You can move, rotate, scale as per usual. You can recolor them. You can put them together to create little shapes like I created here. A little car for the characters. Of course, it's not a functional car. You know, you can't just drive it around. It's all made up of these individual shapes that you can see here. But one of the next features that we do plan is that you will be able to group things together. So you can, for example, all of the entire thing that makes up this car, you can in the future will be able to group together, and then you can to make sure that you can manipulate it as one object, which will make it easier to do more complicated things and move those complicated things around as one unit. So that's pretty much it. I think this video is long enough, 1 hour 15 minutes. Thank you very much for checking out Wildlife. Thank you very much for supporting us this far. I hope you enjoy the Sandbox 2. This is just the beginning. There will be more things that we will do. And yeah, see you guys next time. Bye bye.